Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon once again. So I'm very pleased to welcome you to our first roundtable, which will focus on financing for gender equality in international development cooperation. As we've already heard, and I will not speak at length about the issue, that we do have a crisis with a major shortfall in financing for gender equality for attaining SDG 5 by 2030. So this panel is going to focus on how we can bridge financial gap for gender equality in international development cooperation mechanisms and systems. What are some of the lessons learned, good practices, and what are some of the ways we can innovate? And I'm so honored today that we have a very prominent and esteemed speakers from embassies, from GDPC CIDCA, from multilateral bank, UN agencies, and academia joining us, both Chinese representatives as well as international representatives. So in order to get through the agenda, and we're slightly behind the schedule, I will please ask our panelists to be strictly on time, and because we want to have the opportunity to make sure we're able to have a discussion and a follow-up question and answers with the group, larger group. So without further ado, please allow me to welcome our first speaker, Ambassador Jorge Toledo, who's the European Union Ambassador to China. Your Excellency, thank you so much for joining us today. A brief introduction. Excellency Toledo is an expert in EU, European Union affairs, and also a very seasoned diplomat working in Asia, previously in India, in Japan, and currently in China. The European Union, as many of us already know, is a pioneer and a champion of gender equality, including for financing through its ODA and different instruments. So for example, under the Neighborhood Development and International Cooperation Instrument, Global Europe, EU requires at least 85% of new actions have gender equality as a principal or significant objective in its international development assistance. The EU Fund for Sustainable Development Plus, by incentivizing blended financing with the European Development Finance Institution, aims to mobilize up to 135 billion euros of public and private financing to help partner countries to achieve SDGs, and that also includes gender equality and women's empowerment. So Excellency, with this rich experience, my question to you, and we would love to hear your insights on how EU experiences, how does EU prioritize gender equality in its ODA? Specifically, what are EU's gender equality and women's empowerment priority areas? What are some of the mechanisms and instruments for operationalizing this, especially from financing perspective? I do have several questions, so maybe if I can invite you to briefly touch on these, and then I'll come around for the second round. Over to you, please.
Thank you very much, Smriti. Thank you very much to CCG, to Henry and to Mabel. Thank you all. I'm always very happy to be here. I come very often, I must say. I'm invited very often, and I'm always delighted. As you said, we are in the European Union kind of pioneers in gender equality. I would say that it is in our DNA. Everything we do has this gender equality touch. And not only touch, we do lots of things that are purely gender equality, but in everything we do, we must have now a gender equality action. Not only what we do inside the EU, or not only what we do in the EU institutions, where gender equality is a paramount priority, but what we do across the world. As you now we have an ambitious target, which is that 85% of our new projects will have to contribute to gender equality and women's empowerment by 2025. We have, for over 20 years, had gender focal points in all our embassies. In fact, I'm here with our gender equality focal point in the EU delegation, Delfino Picon. We are in our third generation of 5-year gender action plans. We are guided by what we call the gender equality strategy. And this includes female labor market participation, reducing the gender pay and pension gaps, promoting equality between women and men in decision-making, combating gender-biased violence, and promoting gender equality and women's rights. And when it comes to financing, as you say, our Global Europe instrument, which is the instrument that we are promoting all over the world for our external action, will have these 85% objectives that you mentioned, with a budget of 79.5 billion euros over 7 years. It will contribute to all of the SDGs, but the SDG 5, gender equality, will be one of the most prominent in our action. We also promote gender equality in all our actions that we do with our member states, what we call Team Europe actions. And as you know, the European Union and our member states, we are the largest, by far, the largest provider of aid in the world. And as I say, everything is painted with gender equality.
Thank you so much. So with that, I mean, I think you raised very important 2 points. One is the importance of financial targeting as a commitment for countries who are resourcing to the partnering countries for development assistance. The second is having a targeted strategy and plan that focuses on gender equality. If I can pick up very quickly on 2 points. If I can follow up with a question about the Spotlight initiative. In 2017, and I've seen the journey of Spotlight because I've been with UN Women, and we've been a major partner in implementing Spotlight together with UNFPA, UNDP, UNICEF, a number of agencies. I know this fund was created to end violence against women and trafficking of women. Can you share some lessons and insights on why this fund was created and how it has contributed to achievement in reduction of violence against women, but also looking at aid effectiveness? Has it been effective in achieving some of the other development? Because through women's empowerment, by addressing systematic barriers that women face, we not only empower and support women, but it also makes development outcomes better for all human beings. So if you could speak on that, that would be great.
Well, as you said, we have been working since 2017 with the UN for this Spotlight initiative, which we think is a major initiative for us, for the EU, to promote gender equality, and a very good example of collaboration between us and the United Nations. We are supporting through this initiative a multitude of actions around the world. We have seen through this initiative that social media remains an effective way to challenge harmful gender norms and stereotypes, and to combat violence against women and girls. The use of modern communication channels to reach more people, and especially the young generation, is very important. So we are working. We would like to see more outcomes, more results. But we are working with you in China. In fact, I visited last year. I visited a very important project we have in Kunming, violence against women, and we intend to continue to do so in the next.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Toledo. If I can park there for a moment and turn to Daisy Tang here, who is our second speaker. So please welcome Madam Daisy Tang from GDPC CIDCA. If I may just briefly introduce you. You have a vast experience on China's foreign assistant. She is the Director General of the Global Development Promotion Center of CIDCA and has been leading on South-South cooperation and foreign assistance for China, working closely with bilateral and multilateral development partners, including the United Nations. It is my pleasure to have you here today. Thank you so much for being a co-host and also being a panelist in this session. My question is about China's foreign cooperation policy and approach. In 2021, CIDCA's white paper on China's international development cooperation, we saw that women's empowerment is a key priority. It would be great to hear from you how China's recent cooperation engagement on gender equality have been rolled out, and what are some of the specific areas under this portfolio that you are supporting in other partnering countries?
Sorry. My colleagues, my team said better I answer the questions in Chinese. So since time is limited, I can give as much more information as possible. And so you have to wear that.
To answer your questions.
In Chinese, I can. It's okay.
Totally okay.
Okay. So, 其实呢，中国的那个对外援助呢。
Well, speaking of foreign aid from China, take a bilateral channel as an example. We have already helped over 100 countries, or we've done women and children projects such as Malawi, Sierra Leone, Cambodia, and Cape Verde. And these programs effectively helped the hygiene and health of the women and children in these areas. And at a multilateral level and within South-South Cooperation and Global Development Framework, we've collaborated with a dozen of international organizations. We have already conducted in over 50 countries in Asia, Africa, and Latin America, as many as 100 programs, which are not entirely in the area of women and child care, which, however, is a very important focus within our programs across the world. Let me give you an example. When we work with UNICEF and Somalia, and we helped women suffer from severe malnutrition and also children, and we provided assistance. If I remember correctly, I think it was 250,000 local women and children who benefited from our collaboration with UNICEF and on human resource training over the years. And only for women in developing countries, we invited over 30,000 to China for training, on which increases women capacity building. We also frequently provide an in-kind support.
Sorry, because the
the
translation. So, yes, thank you so much for sharing those concrete examples. Indeed, women and health and malnutrition. Of course, health of women has impact on their whole outlook in life. So that's a very important investment. Also, under SDG 5, we have whole sexual reproductive health as an area which is underfunded. If I can pick up earlier, and I was very excited to hear when you, during your opening speech, you said promoting gender equality is critical to achieving SDG 5 and also a priority area of the Global Development Initiative, GDI. So I'd love to hear, and if you could please share more on how you see opportunities and pathway for China to increase its investment in promoting gender equality through development cooperation, especially under the GDI banner. Thank you.
谢谢。
Thank you. Well, Arya talked about GDI, so please allow me to elaborate. The initiative was proposed by President Xi Jinping on the 76th UN General Assembly. The initiative has been asked quite a lot. What's the difference between SDG and GDI? How do they complement each other? And my understanding is GDI, when compared to 2030 SDGs, are in line in terms of core concepts, but for on the outcomes, they're also highly aligned. And in terms of the logic of global governance, they are also connected and complementary to each other. GDP Center, as a special agency for the implementation of GDI, our mission is to build a platform featuring common sharing, which it aims to do the following things. First, concept dissemination. Second, joint research on innovative pathways. Third, gather resources. And fourth, we not only talk the talk, we will also walk the walk and foster joint actions. And these are the four functions of us as a Center for the Implementation of GDI. Arya also mentioned our toolbox. So what do we have in the toolbox? So we have 8 tools at our center. In the interest of time, I only mentioned 2 that you probably are interested most. The first is a global project database and a global funding base. And what these 2 bases or these 2 resource pools can do for the for women and children. And so first is the project base. It has 2. First is outcome branch, and second, which is to showcase completed projects and successful projects. So it's more success story sharing, which helps on potential partners to get resources and to have these successful experiences to be replicated. And the successful projects that can actually be replicated in more regions and villages. So this is what I call let's call it success branch, and the second is incubation branch. So our center proactively provide projects within incubation branch to look for policy support and resources needed for the incubation of projects. As of today, we have over 2,000 projects in the incubation branch. Just recently, we are onboarding another 500 projects which are being reviewed. Those that are approved will receive support from either Chinese government or the partners of the Chinese government, and we will provide resources for the implementation of these projects. Many of them are related to the health, education, employment of women and girls. I can give you 2 examples. Just yesterday, as a matter of fact, I was with the Forbidden City museum and colleagues from Egypt, and we had a tripartite dialogue. And what we do is to foster culture exchange programs to promote local women in Egypt to design and to make and sell cultural derivative products. This is a very small example. But where do we get intellectual resources? Well, that will come from the professional team of the Forbidden City Museum. And the resource support will come from partially the Forbidden City Museum and also our center. So we will also match resources and funds. And once the synergy is forged, we can help local women in Egypt improve their capacities and employment opportunities. This is a mutual exchange. While we provide help to our partners, we also receive from our Egyptian colleagues how to jointly promote culture exchanges. So this is a win-win and a mutual learning process. Another example also came from yesterday. So last night, I was working with our colleagues from the South Cooperation Office located in New York. We had a productive talk. We are preparing to launch a product that targets on a women in Asia. It's a capacity building program. The South Cooperation Office will provide initial capital, and so our center will also raise fund to help women in Asian countries. Well, in the interest of time, I'm not going to elaborate on the other branch, which is the capital branch. Next, thank you.
Thank you. That's really exciting to hear about the new initiative for women in Asia with the South Cooperation Office, but also to hear about so many other projects you're focusing on. And I think you also highlight the importance of looking at co-financing mechanism as one of the ways of expanding resources, because the needs are so big. And we need to look at ways in which we can innovate to look at private sector and other innovative ways of working together. Thank you. Yes.
对，我再补充一
I wanted to add that everyone is interested in financing. I just want to say in our resource branch or funding branch, so we have the capital from the Chinese government. So it's from the fiscal budget of the Chinese government, and the second is from the South Cooperation Office. And the third source of funding is from our cooperation with banks, including Chinese and multilateral banks, and we have a cooperation framework of $12 billion, which is dedicated to implementation of projects within our project branch, and 5 projects are being implemented right now. Lastly, within the capital branch, we also have a contribution from partners as well as contribution from businesses. So this is a channel with diverse sources. Thank you.
Important point on a diverse need for resource mobilization and looking at co-financing mechanisms, because we're really behind the times. I'm going to move. Thank you so much, DG Tang, to Her Excellency Maria Gustava, who's the Ambassador of Mozambique to China. Excellency Maria Gustava is the Ambassador of Mozambique to China. She has previously engaged on multiple portfolios of countries' foreign policy with focus on Asia and Oceania, multilateral cooperation, and intergovernmental processes before she served as Ambassador to Indonesia and to Republic of Korea. Welcome, Your Excellency. So good to have you here. Thank you so much. So Mozambique has made considerable gains in promoting gender equality, but as in other countries, of course, there are gaps and challenges. And I know that in the political participation, there has been quite a big progress. So as of February 2021, you have 42.4% of seats in parliaments were held by women. And then across legal policy framework, there is a very strong focus on gender equality. And clearly the needs for resources are equally big. Excellency, given your abundance experience in Africa and Asia, what is your take on how countries in the global south, if I can say so, can benefit from development cooperation and South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation for advancing SDGs? And what are some of the enablers to make sure that we can make these cooperations successful on the ground?
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank the CIDCA UN Women China CCG for inviting me for this symposium. And also I want to take this opportunity to express my tribute to all women across the globe, especially those who have been affected by armed conflict. Indeed, Mozambique has made a lot of progress, and we can see the positive impact of the gender equal rights, in the reduction of illiteracy, mortality rates, and others, and also in terms of increasing the numbers of women in the leadership of the country. Based on our experiences, I will say that the development cooperation through official development assistance alongside with South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation are vital tools for advancing SDG 5 in developing countries like Africa and Asia. They are essential source of financing the policies, strategies, programs for gender equality and women empowerment, particularly in advocacy, education, capacity building, political and economic empowerment, and also in transforming social and cultural norms, addressing discrimination and harmful laws, violence, and other practices that contribute for gender inequalities and increasing vulnerability. Indeed, as what was said by the CIDCA representative, South-South cooperation and triangle cooperation, they have a tremendous supportive role in addressing the common challenges based on solidarity, cooperation spirit, and using the experience, knowledge sharing, and best practice expertise and sharing resources. They provide diverse solutions in many areas as education, health, agriculture, rural development through unlocking diverse experience and lesson learned to press developing challenges. And also, I wanted to agree that we still need a lot of resources in our countries to pursue the policy of gender equality. And we need to have the new and innovative forms of mobilization for resources, including the expansion of a range of the donors and actors from private and private sectors, philanthropy associations, and others to be involved on the resources. And also, I believe that the UN has a very critical role in coordination, planning, and monitoring the process. Because we have this three way of cooperating. If there is no coordination and monitoring, there can be some fragmentation and overlapping. And so it shall be based on the comparative advantage of each one to have more impact in the society. So I wanted to say that on terms of the mobility, that is very important. In terms of impact of cooperation on the ground, is really essential to establish a coherent and effective collaboration and coordination among all stakeholders at different levels. The full participation of intervened identification, planification, and execution of programs is important because it can bring the ownership, because we can even involve the local. They know what is their need, is not what's coming from outside. So if everybody is part of the whole process, there's more impact. For which I think that is very important to have this coordination, and including the women organization and civil society groups toward responsive needs and priority. And also, there is a need of more accountability and monitoring process on gender equality in development cooperation activity, which means that we need effective collaboration and cooperation from all, including donors, civil society, academia, regional and multiple agencies in pursuing a common objectives and goals to attain the equal rights for all women, and also yes. Oh, sorry, sir. So but I'm always coming to the end for this to say that we need to work all together and including everybody, and more resources are needed and all forms of cooperation are important to attain the equal rights and gender empowerment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Starr. Yes. Yes. I think you've raised two many important points, but if I can pick on two new points that hasn't come up yet. One is the role of the UN and the necessity to engage whole of society, that everyone, the participation of people and stakeholders is really critical in the achievement of goal. And the other point is around accountability. If I understand correctly, what you're trying to say is money alone is not enough, that we need to make sure that there are tools, systems, and processes and standards in place to ensure accountability to the commitment that is being made. And I hope we can touch a bit more on that in our second session as well, because there is a lot on the national policy and commitments from within the country and how that comes through and is in synergistic with the international resources that will be. Thank you for raising those very important points. I will come back to you for the second round. I'm really hoping we have the time to do so. But thank you for now. And now I move to my dear colleague from UNDP, Ms. Beate Trankman, who is the resident representative of UNDP here in China. Beate, welcome. She is, as I said, the resident rep of UNDP and is also a co-chair of the Global Partnership Group under the UN Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework in China. UN in China, I think Sid, our RC already mentioned, gender equality is an important priority across the board in everything we do. It also includes the UN's international development cooperation and South-South cooperation engagement with China and development partners, encompassing partnership building, advocacy, policy dialogue, norms and standards. So based on a huge past experience that you have personally working in so many different countries in Asia and around the world, and your current role as the co-chair, Beate, it would be great if you could enlighten us a little bit on how do you see the opportunities and pathway for the UN and China to work more closely together in advancing gender equality and generating more resources for investment in China through China's international development cooperation engagements at both policy and programmatic levels. Over to you. Thank you so much and warm welcome once again.
Thank you, Smriti. Good afternoon to all, and very happy International Women's Day. Really great to be here. Now, let me preface my reflections by saying that gender equality, apart from being a fundamental human right, I think is also the key ingredient to sustainable development and the foundation for a peaceful and prosperous world. And of course, investing in women also makes absolute business sense. We know that when women and girls are given equal opportunities, we see profound impacts on poverty alleviation, on health, education, but also on overall economic growth. And let me just give you one data point to illustrate that. Closing the gender global employment gap would raise GDP by nearly 20% on average across countries. And that could double current global GDP within the decade. That's a World Bank figure. So if women started and scaled new businesses at the same rate as men do, that could bring gains of $5 to $6 trillion to the global economy. So that's just to illustrate the developmental impact. Now, UNDP as a multilateral development actor, we strive to incorporate gender across all aspects of our work to achieve sustainable development around the world. Gender equality is one of the 6 priorities of UNDP's global strategic plan 2022 to 2025. And that focus is underpinned by a dedicated gender equality strategy that is highlighting entry points for gender empowerment and equality across the other 5 pillars. And I think one interesting example for this type of cross is the work that we are doing through our economics initiative that supports finance ministries and tax authorities in 26 countries around the world to make sure that fiscal policies actually work for women and gender. Now, we also have, talking about institutional culture, a gender equality seal certification program that guides our country offices in incorporating gender considerations into our projects. At UNDP China, our project expenditure directed towards gender equality and women's empowerment has increased from 19% to 79% since we started participating in this program. So that's a very proud achievement for me personally also. Now, let me turn to the UN in China and China. So I think in 2021, the release of China's third white paper on international development cooperation marked in fact a historic shift because it prioritized for the very first time gender as a key focus and priority area. And I think that demonstrated China's commitments to integrating gender into its broader development cooperation strategies, and of course is an acknowledgement of the importance of gender equality in promoting inclusive sustainable development internationally by China. So as the UN, we welcome this shift, and we are actively engaging and supporting China to realize these commitments. Let me give you a few quick snippets of examples. At the policy level, the UN, led by UN Women, conducted a gender analysis of the CIDCA Action Plan, helping to incorporate, yet again, an emphasis on gender equality and women's empowerment. At the programmatic level, we have worked with MOFCOM, but also, of course, with CIDCA, a very important partner for us, on advancing gender equality through South-South cooperation. We, for example, provided skills and equipment to women in Bangladesh to encourage entrepreneurship in the garment sector. In Lebanon, we have equipped women entrepreneurs with access to various e-commerce platforms and supply chain tools. And I think what is important here is that these initiatives promote, of course, livelihoods and supported the recovery from COVID-19, but they also strengthen overall resilience of women against external shocks, when we know that women are actually more vulnerable to these type of shocks and recover at a slower pace. The UN, as the UN, we're also currently starting a multi-year project with the European Union to inform policy and practice of China's international development cooperation for enhanced SDG impact. And let me use the opportunity to thank Ambassador Toledo and the EU for engaging with us on this initiative. Now, I think to close, for China to advance and consolidate this emerging strong gender focus in its development engagement, a comprehensive approach that will be needed that cuts across all stages of the programming cycle, both from design and implementation, but also how we monitor and measure impact. And so, Madame Tanging, we very much welcome the efforts that CIDCA has been making to develop dedicated gender indicators as part of the new monitoring and evaluation framework that you put out last year at the Sunshine Forum. And we look forward to hopefully continuing to engage with you on the rollout of this framework. So I think, we've heard that the signing is on the wall. We won't achieve SDG 5 if we exclude half the world's population, their ingenuity, and their potential to contribute. And this is why it's important to enhance our efforts and invest in women. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Beate. That was very well said. Just two very important points I picked up. The last one being the importance of monitoring. To so know that we are headed in the right direction, that there is progress being made and it is effective. So it's part of the whole package from planning, designing, resourcing to monitoring and evaluation. Very important point. I think you also highlight the importance of intersectionality and looking at different ways to address different vulnerabilities women face. And congratulations to you on the progress using the gender seal. If I can pick up from different examples, it is clear that we need to be intentional about gender targeted programming. It is not enough just to do mainstreaming, because the targeted programming will accelerate the progress towards ending the gap that we see today. Thank you. And now I think just on monitoring and evaluation, I move to the right person. Welcome, Mr. Thomas Hasba. Sorry if I did not pronounce your name correctly, who is the OECD representative in China and senior advisor for China Affairs. He brings vast experience working on OECD DAC and non-DAC actors, including with China. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today. So my question to you, what is your overall take on how gender equality and women's empowerment can achieve development effectiveness in context of development cooperation? And can you share with us any gender toolkits and policy instrument that it's been very useful and has been tried and tested? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for inviting me and the OECD to speak at this event. And my heartfelt greeting to everyone on the International Women's Day. I hope it's not going to be only the occasion of the 8th of March, but hopefully this is going to be an extended International Women's Day, since we need to integrate it and have it in our everyday life, gender equality and women's empowerment. Indeed, the development cooperation is or should integrate gender equality. And this is not only a key component of sustainable development, as Beate just mentioned, but the reason why we are talking about development cooperation as a main tool, for a very simple reason that ODA, development assistance, remains a major source of financing of gender equality. Just to note that 43% of bilateral allocable ODA had gender equality as a policy objective in 2019 and 20. Of course, the major part of this ODA was integrated in gender equality programs, which has gender equality as a policy objective. But as Smriti, you already pronounced or announced before, it's only 4%, a staggering 4% of this bilateral allocable ODA was dedicated to programs with gender equality as the principal objectives. So there is a long way to go. And there's another thing that came to my mind as well, that the gender equality related ODA is allocated to different sectors. Of course, everybody knows women empowerment, employment, education, healthcare, but the sectors that have the lowest share of aid with gender equality objectives are humanitarian aid and energy. And I think especially the former is a shocking fact. Now, empowering women, enhancing development effectiveness, of course, and integrating gender equality, women's empowerment into development cooperation yields a lot of benefits that significantly enhance development effectiveness. And let me just go through a couple of points where we see that development cooperation and gender equality is improving the effectiveness of development cooperation. First of all, this is improved targeting and intervention. Recognizing the gender dynamics enables tailored interventions addressing the specific needs of women and girls, and thereby addressing root causes of gender disparities effectively. This is also for enhanced impact and sustainability and economic growth and poverty reduction. As for the latter, closing, as just mentioned by Beate, and let me also share with you some OECD data in this regard. Closing the gaps in labor force participation and working hours may result in an average boost of 9.2% to GDP across OECD countries by 2060, which is adding about 0.2 percentage points to average annual growth. Social cohesion and stability, promoting gender equality, fosters inclusive societies and reducing tensions and promoting peace by empowering women in decision-making processes. Enhanced accountability and transparency has already been mentioned, so I don't want to go into details on that. And last but not least, though, Beate again mentioned fulfillment of human rights and dignity. Now, coming to the policy tools and instruments, we see a great variety or diversity across the board. I mean, all the countries have their own system and their own ideas and own approaches. So what the OECD has been doing for many, many years, we try to establish instruments and some tools to help governments and also the organizations involved in development cooperation and gender equality to have some guidance, some kind of major principles. First, and I'd like to pick only two of them. One is the gender recommendations of the OECD. That is a robust, a large framework for promoting gender equality and women's empowerment across various sectors. And it's already been mentioned, the key elements, they encompass policy frameworks, education, employment, social protection, political participation, and data collection. And this is providing a comprehensive guidance for integrating gender equality into development cooperation. And the second tool is called the OECD DUC Development Assistance Committee's Gender Equality Policy Marker. This is a statistic tool to record development activities targeting gender equality. I think apart from being a good instrument to check to what extent the resources that we are spending will pursue the goal or reach the goals of gender equality, this is also a very helpful to use in our monitoring and evaluation. So just coming to evaluation, I think just in a very brief manner, I think we all agree that there are major principles used by a lot of agencies and countries across the board. The OECD DUC has the so-called criteria, the 6 criteria of evaluation: relevance, coherence, effectiveness, efficiency, impact, and sustainability. And of course, all of them can target the gender equality perspective. Now, there are similarities between different approaches of international organizations and, of course, countries. And among these commonalities, I would just share the focus on ethical, inclusive, participatory evaluation approaches. I mean, this should be the ones. And then, of course, locally based evaluators and researchers, those are the ones who should be involved in this evaluation and monitoring processes as well. But all this looks very, very good. But if we go down to the practice, then we see that there are a lot of issues, and the devil lies in the details in terms of evaluation and monitoring. And let me just highlight 2 or 3 points of them. For instance, measuring gender equality change, and especially gender transformative change, is unlikely to be achieved within a timeline of a typical project. As with other complex social changes, for instance, changes in gender relations can often be unpredictable or carry some unpredictability. So changes that seem to be positive at the first sight, they can deteriorate at a later stage. Now, the other one is result reporting. We like it because, of course, that can encourage a lot of political and financial support for policies, programs, and projects. But at the same time, the burden of reporting on different stakeholders. And of course, we are not talking about large multilateral organizations that have the capacity to deal with it, but for smaller development cooperation actors, this is a huge burden: data collection and data monitoring and data presentations. And last but not least, of course, data, as I already shared, data collection for valuation, their ethical considerations must be front and center. And we have to admit that this is not only sometimes the lack of data that we deal with, because in many contexts where evaluations are undertaken, support for gender equality is really, really limited. So I think one of the key points where I think international cooperation, close cooperation, we really should consider is data sharing and building databases that we can use for monitoring of the implementation of these projects. And I stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thomas. I mean, you've raised so many very, very pertinent points about effectiveness and how we measure transformation in gender equality. In the interest of time, because I realize we're already 10 minutes behind and we have 2 more speakers, so I will not summarize yet. Hopefully we'll have a chance to go back and have conversation on some of this. Without further ado, may I please invite Mr. Eric Borgloff, Chief Economist of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. It is my pleasure to welcome you, Eric, here today. Thank you so much for joining us. And we look forward to hearing from you on how AIIB, as a multilateral development bank, incorporates a gender lens into its policies, operations, and programs to impact investment and for development cooperation, especially looking at innovative financing as an instrument going forward.
Okay, so thank you very much, and colleagues, thank you for inviting us to this important event and to this celebration of International Women's Day. So I think the International Women's Day is not only important because it's an opportunity to celebrate the contribution of women, but it's also an important opportunity for us to reflect on what we are doing to promote this agenda and where we are on this journey towards achieving SDG 5. So I represent an institution that is quite young still, and we have been the fastest growing IFI in history, I think, but we are still very much at the beginning of our journey, and that also goes to what we do in this space of gender equality. And so I'm here both to explain what we do, but of course also to listen and learn from what others are doing. I would say something a bit about our thinking, and I would say something a bit about our action and what we do in terms of sort of framework, but also specifically on a couple of examples of investment. So you can may wonder why is the chief economist here to talk about this topic. It's not that we do recognize, and it's absolutely crucial that these are issues of rights and freedoms. It's about, of course, issues around violence and also making sure that women are treated fairly and so on. But it's also very fundamentally an issue, and Beata's comment very much illustrates this. It's an issue about economic opportunities and the equality of opportunity. And my experience also that this is actually a way that we can really help transform the thinking, and the economic pathway is also a pathway towards achieving greater freedom, achieving a greater choice for women, and giving them their rightful position in society. So I have had a previous life in an institution, European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, and we didn't pay much attention to this for a long time. We were working mostly in Eastern Europe countries that maybe this was not the number one topic. But then we were asked to go into Turkey, we were asked to go into Middle East, where 80% of women are outside the labor force. And that forced us to rethink the completely what we were doing, and also bringing out, what waste it is to have so many people outside contributing, opportunities to contribute to within the formal economy to developing businesses and contributing in different ways. So from my experience, the sort of equality opportunity approach is a very powerful way of pursuing the interest of women. And I wanted to give you an example of how we are thinking about this. So very much taking this economic inclusion approach to approaching this agenda. We are implementing our framework to look at every single project. How can we use that project to promote this agenda? And this is something that, from my experience, again, aspect to not just mainstreaming, but it's about seeing what are the opportunities in this project to enhance this agenda. I'll give you two examples of how this could be reflected in what we're doing. One is a direct investment that we are making in something called Southeast Asia's Women Economic Empowerment Fund. It's a private equity closed-end fund run by women with a specific objective of pursuing women leadership, identifying and supporting small and medium-sized enterprises run by women. We're working with the management of this fund to develop a specific incentive schemes to reward measurement of how much they have helped women-owned and led businesses, how much they can show with concrete evidence gender improvement over time, and also related it to climate disclosure. So really trying to find a powerful framework that could allow us to monitor and help support the efforts of this fund that is working across Southeast Asia. The other example, which is maybe more typical for what we are doing and refers back to what I said about using this framework, looking at all our investments, is we were working on the metro, the second phase of the metro in Mumbai. And a very important part of this was seeing how could we make sure, and this is of course from a bank that invests in infrastructure, the more we can get women to use the infrastructure where we invest, the more, of course, the economic benefits, but also the financial benefits, and make the financial case for a particular investment comes from that. And what we could show is that, when it turns out that you ask women have much longer journeys typically on the metros because they wanted to avoid certain parts of the system where they didn't feel safe. They didn't travel certain hours because it was dark on the platforms, and you need to take that into account. Often they felt harassed in compartments and so on. Very simple things that we could do by improving the lighting on the platforms, creating specific compartments for women and so on. So this is what I mean by looking for each project, what can we do to promote women participation and increase their access to use specific infrastructure investments. I could go on, but I just wanted to say these are sort of two ways in which, again, we are in the beginning of our journey. We very much appreciate we have had a chance to work with many of you, but of course, we would like to work with even more of you and help us develop this approach. And I again celebrate this opportunity to discuss these issues and have contact with you. So thank you very much for inviting us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric. If I can just very briefly follow up with you on that example in Mumbai. My question was, is this applied across the board? Meaning, does AIIB have a standard and a approach towards every construction? You look at safety of women and lighting issues, or is it more demand driven by country who's asking for?
No. So I think so. Our objective is certainly to make this a standard. I cannot reassure you, as I said, we are in the beginning of our journey. This has to, we view ourselves as drivers of this. Obviously, we want to bring our clients along because otherwise it won't work. We need to, help convince, these clients that we have that this is the way to make this both economically beneficial but also financially beneficial. You can go through almost every aspect of our infrastructure and think, apply it to that.
Yes, thank you. And I think this is where the tricky aspect of should we focus on demand driven? Because sometimes there may not ever be a demand because so many times women are not representative in leadership position and hence cannot bring a gender perspective into a decision making. Or do we set benchmark and standard that means that univocally?
Yeah. And I want
everybody
to
will
emphasize that
follow.
when we talk about inclusion of women, it's not just about getting access to but also participation in the design of which I think the example I gave is about, allowing women maybe in a kind of primitive way, but, of course, more fundamentally.
Yeah.
There's a lot of evidence suggesting that if we do that, we will also get infrastructure that is more inclusive. So in terms of their participation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very important point about inclusive participation. Thank you so much. So now I move to our last but not the least. Please, Professor Li Yingtao. It is my great pleasure to welcome you here. Thank you so much for joining. Professor Li Yingtao is a professor at the School of International Relations and Diplomacy at Beijing Foreign Studies University. And she has a solid background and is a passionate women's rights advocate. I know that. Her background is on feminist international relations, global governance, and multilateralism, and who has also been involved in intergovernmental processes like the Commission on Status of Women. Thank you so much for joining us here today. My question to you is about China's poverty achievement in poverty alleviation, and 50% of whom were women. There is obviously a lot of opportunity for China to share experiences and lessons learned through South-South cooperation in accelerating SDGs, specifically on poverty alleviation. Where do you see the opportunities, gaps, and any recommendations you have in strengthening gender equality and women's empowerment in China's development cooperation as we move ahead? Thank you.
特别感谢主持人的美言哦，我就觉得特别不敢当。
Thank you very much for your kind words, and I am very flattered. I am very delighted to be here to be part of this discussion. For today, actually, to answer your question, and there are some data involved, and in order for everyone to have a better idea, I have come with a slide and a PowerPoint, and I don't want to cause a lot of problem for everyone sitting here today. And is it possible that my slide could be shared on the screen? Okay, great. Thank you. My topic is investing in women, and with the green and purple economy as a focus to push forward for sustainable development. Earlier, a lot of speakers have talked about China's great achievement in poverty alleviation, and thank you for mentioning about the great achievement of China in this area, Ms. Aryal. And in addition, we have also talked about South-South collaboration and the triangle collaboration that China has participated in. I am very delighted to hear the contribution that China has made and are being mentioned here by all our speakers. So here I would like to especially mention three following points. This is my table of content, and very quickly, I'd like to talk about the topic. And today is International Women's Day, and next week, and I'm going to the United Nations and to participate on the side event, which will be discussing about the women's issue. So very glad to have this opportunity to talk to you all about this in advance, ahead of my meeting next week. And we often talk about, for instance, investment in women, alleviation of poverty and gender equality and sustainable development. I'm not going to go into how important those issues are. And I think that whilst in the current background and the challenge of a global conflict and economic crisis, what are the areas that we can continue to push forward for gender equality and continue to push forward for sustainable development? And we can see that right now in terms of economic crisis and when the global challenge, and we do see that there are a lot of difficulties in terms of the current international situation and in terms of the hard topics and
soft topics. So we believe that the soft topics play an even more important role in here. And I myself, I work in international relations. So when we talk about poverty issues and for South-South collaboration, South-North cooperation, and a triangle collaboration. These are very important. When we talk about green economy, this is about climate change. Purple economy, and usually we would say that this is a care economy. However, it is not only just about the care economy. Of course, in the green economy, we also have a digital economy, and how do we use a digital economy, green economy, and a purple economy to combine all of these together. This is something that we need to see, and this is something that is worth studying and researching on. In today's environment, and actually the cross-sector personal identity and people's recognition of oneself, and there is a huge discrepancy. And we talk about women, but there is also a huge difference among women. So how do we look at this from an intersectional perspective to look at a vulnerable group, look at women's development? These are very important parts. And on this basis, so on this slide, I have listed out the international cooperation examples. So I would also talk about the best practice in China. This is very important. Why so? The China's development has provided a paradigm for international development. However, how do we use from domestic China and to international sphere, and how to adopt this example? In China, we have recently there is a company and which is called Nanny is here, or Auntie is here, and you can see that they have about 120 offline stores. At the moment, they have already trained up 460,000 people who are working in the areas of providing home cares, and they have served 300,000 families. And not only that, they work as an auntie for your home and to look after your home. And in addition, they can also become leaders themselves. And you can see that these aunties, they would also receive the pensions and, for instance, medical care, etc. And they have moved people from informal sector to the formal sector. And in the past, they were simply a nanny, but now they are actually leaders of a team. And so we believe that this is very important. And in the interest of time, I'll stop here.
Thank you so much for that example. It's very useful to know. And I think we do need to look at how the domestic success in overcoming one development challenge, how we can contribute and translate that internationally. I think that's the area that is not entirely explored. So I agree with you that we need to look at South-South, North-South, all kind of cooperation and resourcing it. I think that's an important point. We are very behind the schedule. I've obviously done a terrible job with timekeeping. So in the interest of time, I do have a lot of questions for follow-up, but maybe I can just very briefly invite, like literally in 3 words, any parting conclusion our panelists and speakers would like to make about the topic. And I will go chronologically with Ambassador Toledo first, maybe just very briefly.
Thank you very much. Extremely interesting, extremely enlightening, and we are all in the same line. But 3 words, just to announce that we were not celebrating Women's Day and a European Union delegation. We are celebrating a month. We'll be doing events from here till the end of the month. We have a commissioner of education culture coming, and we will also do events with her, but other events are programmed. And in fact, we call it a month, although we could call it a year, because we do, as I said, gender equality is in our DNA, and we all do everything thinking of gender equality. Thank you very much.
Okay, so in the interest of time, we will go to Ambassador Gustava. If you want to say just 2 words, maybe 30 seconds. I'm further cutting it down. Yes.
I'll just say
It's fast because we are behind the
I'll
schedule.
just say happy International Women's Day, and that we are looking for the cooperation between Africa and China on this
Yes.
issue.
Yeah, FOCAC is coming up,
Yes,
so that's
yes.
a good opportunity.
That's all.
Yes.
One word from me is let's leave the floor to our next speakers. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's a signal for closing. And if I may, thank you so much once again. Let's give a big round of applause to our speakers and panelists. Thank you. Excellent. So